My name is Delia Marchetti. I'm 41 years old, and last October I watched a waiter carry 7 lobsters past my daughter's chair. I need you to see it the way I saw it, because the cruelty wasn't in the shouting. There wasn't any shouting. That's the part people don't believe. The Beacon Room at Callaway's Point has one long table and a wall of windows that face the water, and in October the light comes in sideways and turns everything the color of weak tea. My family has eaten in that room on the second Saturday of October for 31 years. 22 of us that night. 4 generations if you counted my mother, and my mother always counted. The lobsters came out on a rolling cart under a cloth, because the room does a little presentation, because that's what the room is for. The server lifted the cloth, somebody's kid whooped, and then 2 servers went down the table setting plates in front of children. Cal, 13. Plate. Prue, 11. Plate. Odile, 10. Plate. Wilder, 9. Plate. Tobias, 6. Plate. Marit, 6. Plate. Kit, 4, who cannot eat a lobster, who has never eaten a lobster, who ate 3 bites of the tail and then went under the table with a napkin on his head. Plate. 7 plates, $95 each. $665 in shellfish for children, most of whom wanted the fries. And then a server came around the corner with a small white bowl of buttered noodles and set it in front of my daughter Simone, who is 8 years old, who had been sitting up straight for 40 minutes with her hands in her lap the way I taught her, watching that cart the whole way down the table. She looked at the bowl. Then she looked up at the server and said, "Thank you. It smells really good." "That's my kid. That's the whole thing right there." She said thank you. My sister-in-law Renata was at the head of the table with her wine, and she caught my eye across all those plates and she smiled at me. Not a smirk. Nothing so useful as a smirk. A warm, sympathetic, hostess smile, and she leaned in a little and said it over the noise, in a voice pitched for exactly the 4 people nearest her. "It's a head count thing." I didn't raise my voice. I didn't say anything at all. I cut Simone's noodles smaller because she was 8 and the bowl was hot, and I told her the butter at this place was the good kind and I ate my chicken. But I want to be honest with you about something, and it matters later. Underneath the table, my hand was flat on my knee, and I was thinking about a group chat I hadn't opened in 2 years. I didn't know yet what was in it. I just knew I was still in it. I was the one who made it. That group chat is the only weapon I had in this entire story. I used it once. Not that night. 3 days later, on a Tuesday morning at 9:14, when my phone buzzed twice and I finally understood exactly what my daughter had been left out of, and it was so much worse and so much colder than a plate of pasta. I'm going to tell you what was in those 2 screenshots. I'm going to tell you who I sent them to, and I'm going to tell you why I never had to say a single word at the meeting they called about me. But not yet. Welcome back to Calm Drama Stories, where we take the long way to the truth and never raise our voice. If you have ever been counted out of something by people who would swear on their lives they love you, if you've ever been the one who wasn't on the list, and had to smile about it so the day wouldn't be ruined, this story is for you. Drop a comment and tell me where you're listening from tonight. And if you want to hear how this ended, subscribe. Because this one ends quiet and it ends clean. But let me back up. I'm a stage manager. 20 years, most of them at the Prosser Playhouse, a 340-seat house in a town where the theater and the hospital are the 2 largest employers, and everyone's cousin works at one of them. If you don't know what a stage manager does, here's the short version. I am the reason 140 things happen in the right order in front of 200 people who will never once think about me. I run the rehearsals. I keep the prompt book, which is the script with every light cue and sound cue and entrance written into the margins in pencil, because everything is in pencil until it isn't. I call the show from a headset in a dark booth. Lights 19, go. Sound 12, go. Nobody claps for me. That's not a complaint. That's the job description. The job is to be invisible and correct. I make $61,000 a year, which in my family is a rounding error and a punchline. My brother Anders is in commercial insurance. My sister Joelle's husband does something with medical devices. My youngest sister Thea does the books for 3 dental practices and out-earns me by 20 grand. And Renata, my brother's wife, runs a business called Voss and Ivy. Event styling. Tablescapes, floral, narrative design for gatherings, which is a real phrase from her real website. Weddings, corporate retreats, a very expensive Christmas market she does every year in the old cannery. She is genuinely good at it. I want to say that plainly, because if I make her a cartoon, you'll stop believing me, and I need you to believe me. Renata is the most competent person in my family. She is also the reason my daughter got noodles. Here's the part that took me until I was 38 to see. In a family, there's the person who has the power, and there's the person everyone thinks has the power, and they are almost never the same person. Everyone in the Marchetti family would tell you my mother runs things. Vivienne Marchetti, 79, 5'1", still drives, still hosts, still says grace in a way that makes grown men sit up. She is the matriarch. She holds the name. But my mother doesn't run anything anymore. She approves things. There's a difference, and the difference is where all the rot got in. Because for about 9 years, the person who actually decided who got invited, who sat where, who was in the photo, what got ordered, what got billed, and to whom, that was Renata. She built it slowly, and she built it kindly. She started by helping. She was so helpful, and every single time she made a call, she made it in my mother's name. Vivienne wants it small this year. Vivienne asked me to keep it to the grandkids. That came from your mother, Delia, not from me. Hold on to that. All of it comes down to that. And me? I was the one with the clipboard. I want to be honest with you about this, because I've had a long time to sit with it, and it doesn't flatter me. I trained them to treat me this way. I did. For 15 years, I was the family's unpaid crew. I did the run of show for my mother's 70th. I built the seating chart for Anders and Renata's wedding. All 206 of them, including the 2 uncles who couldn't be in the same room. I rented and returned the tables for Thea's baby shower. I'm the one who shows up at 7 in the morning with the extension cords and the gaff tape and the folding cart. And I'm the one who's still there at midnight, breaking down chairs in a rented hall with my shoes off, while everyone else posts the photos. Nobody ever asked me to sit down. Not once. And here's the thing I never asked either. I liked being needed. Being needed felt like being loved with the paperwork already done. And every year, the photos from those events went up on the Voss and Ivy account. Beautiful photos. Real ones. The linen I ironed. The place cards I hand-lettered at my kitchen table with a bad pen while a pot boiled over. Captioned, "A family gathering we styled this weekend. 3 generations. Everything intentional." I never said a word about it. It made her business look good. Her business paid for my nieces and nephews. What was I going to do? Ask for a credit? On a family dinner? That's the exploitation, and I know it sounds small next to money. It isn't money. What Renata took from me for 9 years was my work, converted into her image. And what she eventually took from Simone was smaller and much more expensive. I have to go back to 1996 for one thing, and then I'll come forward. I promise. I was 11. My father Alton was alive then. He died 6 years ago. And this whole October dinner started as his birthday, which is why nobody will ever cancel it, and why it matters as much as it does. My grandmother's 50th anniversary party. Rented hall, the kind with a stage at one end and a floor that's sticky no matter what. 60-some people. And a photographer. Because there was always a photographer. Because in my family, the event is the rehearsal, and the photograph is the performance. There weren't enough seats at the main tables. There never are. So my Aunt Corinne set up a folding card table out in the hallway by the coat rack, under a fluorescent tube that hummed, and she put a paper cloth on it and a cup of crayons, and she sat 4 of us out there, me, and 3 little kids I barely knew. I remember the hum of that light. I remember the smell of wet coats. And I remember when the photographer came around and did the family shots. Somebody stuck their head out into the hallway and said, "We'll grab you kids after." And they didn't. So I drew the whole family on that paper tablecloth in crayon. Everybody. 60-some people, in a long line holding hands, going all the way around the edge of that card table and back, and I put myself in it, in the middle, between my parents, where I wasn't sitting. My dad found me out there at some point. He crouched down and looked at the paper for a long time. He was not a talker. He was a man who fixed things and then left the room. He said, "Who's that one?" And I said, "That's me." And he said, "Good. Keep it that way." Then he went back in. He didn't move me to the main table. He didn't say anything to his sister. He just told an 11-year-old to keep drawing herself in, and then he left me in a hallway. I loved my father. That's the whole complicated truth about how families do this. It isn't monsters. It's good people who won't make a scene. The other person I need you to know is Hollis Beaumont. And thank God Hollis is still alive, still 72, still comes into the Playhouse 3 days a week, even though we technically retired him in 2019. Hollis was our master electrician for 31 years, and he's the one who taught me the prompt book when I was 22 and useless. He taught me that you write everything down in the moment it happens, not later, because later you're a liar with good intentions. He taught me to say stand by before go, always, so nobody gets startled in the dark. And he's the one who told me about the ghost light. That's the bare bulb on a stand you leave burning center stage in an empty theater overnight. Some people will tell you it's for the ghosts. It isn't. It's so the next person who walks into that dark room doesn't fall off the edge of the stage. Hollis said to me once, in a fly rail full of dust, "The light's not for you. You already know where the edge is." I've thought about that sentence roughly 4,000 times in the last year. I couldn't have children. I'm going to say that once and then move past it, because it isn't the story and I'm not interested in being pitied about it. But it's the reason the rest lands the way it does. I fostered starting at 34. Simone came to me at 5, in February, in a coat that was too big, holding a plastic grocery bag with a toothbrush, and 2 shirts and a stuffed dog with 1 eye. I'm not going to tell you her history, because it's hers and not mine, and she'll decide someday who gets it. I'll tell you this. She didn't cry that first night. She stood in the middle of my living room and asked me where she should put her bag so it wouldn't be in the way. 5 years old, and her first instinct was to not be in the way. The adoption was finalized when she was 5.5. My mother came to the courthouse. Joelle came. Thea came with Odile. Anders came late and left early and gave Simone a $100 gift card to a toy store, which was generous, which I want to be fair about. Renata didn't come. She sent flowers to my apartment with a card that said, "So happy for your family." Your family. Not the family. Yours. I noticed it. I told myself I was being crazy. I put the card in a drawer. Here's what I did wrong, and I've thought about this more than anything else in the last year. I never made them say it out loud. I never once said at a dinner, in front of everyone, "Simone is your granddaughter. Say it." I never made anyone define the word, because I was afraid of the answer, and as long as nobody said it, I could keep the version of my family I wanted. So instead of one hard conversation, I got 6 years of arithmetic. Because here's how they said it. They never said it. They counted. I keep a prompt book at work. Everything in pencil, dated, timed. 20 years of that will do something to your brain. I started writing this down without deciding to. December 2019. 10 months after Simone came home, 4 months after finalization. Christmas Eve at my mother's. The mantel has stockings on it, hand-knit, one per grandchild. My mother's own work since 1998. That year there were 7 up there. Simone got a gift bag on the coffee table. A nice one. Good gifts in it, honestly. I found Renata in the kitchen and I asked, lightly, because I was still light back then, whether we could get one made for Simone for next year. She put her hand on my arm. She has a very warm hand. She said, "Oh, Delia, your mother knits those. We didn't want to assume. What if it didn't work out?" What if it didn't work out? About a legally adopted 8-year-old, she was 6 then. Her name on my last name on a court document with a seal on it. I said okay. I want that on the record. I said okay. And I went back out and I told Simone the bag meant she was special. April 2021. The spring portrait at my mother's, the one that goes on the Christmas card. Photographer named Ruth. Been doing it for years. They do the whole group. Then the couples. Then just the grandkids, which is the shot my mother frames. I had Simone in the green dress. She'd asked to wear the green dress. She walked up and stood at the end of the row next to Wilder, and Renata came in from the side, hands out, doing that gentle traffic cop thing she does, and steered her out by the shoulders, warmly, smiling down at her the whole time. "Sweetheart, this one's just the 7. We'll do a special one of you after." They didn't do a special one of her after. Simone was 7. She came and stood next to me and watched. She didn't ask why. That's the part I'd like erased from my head. She didn't ask why, because she already had a working theory, and she was too polite to check it. July 2022. The Cousins Week at my mother's lake place. Started in 2009, 1 week every summer. All the grandkids, all ages. My mother and one rotating parent. It's the best thing my family does. Genuinely. The list went out. 7 names. I called Renata. 9 years of clipboards had earned me 1 phone call, I figured. She was so nice about it. She's always so nice about it. That's what I can't get across to people. She said, "It's a headcount thing, hun. Your mother has 6 beds and 1 couch. And Simone's still adjusting, isn't she? We didn't want to overwhelm her." Simone had been home 3.5 years. That was the second time I heard that phrase. It's a headcount thing. It's going to come back. It comes back a lot. April 2023. Easter. Kids' table in the sunroom. 7 place cards. Calligraphy. Little pressed flowers on them. Absolutely beautiful. Renata's work. Simone ate at the adult table on my lap. At the corner. Off a side plate. Because there was no 8th chair. She was very cheerful about it. She said it was better because she could hear the grown-up jokes. October 2023. My father's dinner. The October one. The year before this, all broke. Callaway's Point. Renata did a toast about legacy. She said the phrase, "the 7 of them," and lifted her glass toward the kid's end. Anders, my brother. Simone's uncle by blood. My father's son turned and looked at me for about a second and a half. He knew. He turned back. I want to be clear about my brother. He never did one single thing to my daughter. Not one. He just never did one single thing. March 2024. My mother's 79th. Renata made a memory book, hardcover, printed, gorgeous. A page for each branch. In the front, a dedication in a nice serif font. For Vivienne, and for her 7 grandchildren. Simone is in that book. 1 photo. She's in the background of a shot of Kit's birthday. Out of focus. Cut off at the shoulder. I sat in my car in the driveway afterward for 11 minutes before I could drive. And I did nothing. 6 documented times over 5 years, and I did nothing but adjust. That's not a humble brag about my patience. That's the confession. Every time I smoothed it over, I taught them the price of doing it again was 0. So they did it again. And the 7th time, they did it with Lobster. The dinner is the 2nd Saturday in October, and it has been since 1994, when it was my father's 50th birthday, and he complained the whole time and then talked about it until the following August. He died in 2019. We kept it. That's the closest my family gets to a religion. Callaway's Point is a converted boathouse on the north side of the lake. The beacon room is upstairs, private, one long table, a wall of west-facing windows. Renata handles the booking. She has since 2017, when I handed it to her. Because she asked. And because I was in tech for a show that closed the same weekend. And because, I'll say it, I was tired of being crew at my own father's dinner. I gave it away. Nobody took it from me. I got there at 5:40 with Simone. She'd picked her own outfit, a navy dress with a cardigan, and she'd asked me twice in the car whether it looked like a nice restaurant kind of dress. She was 8 and worried about the dress code at a boathouse. The room smelled like butter and lake water and somebody's hairspray. My mother was at the far end in the blue chair they always put out for her, holding court, hands doing that small, quick thing they do when she's happy. She saw Simone and she lit up and she said, "There's my girl, come here." And Simone ran the length of that room and got hugged for a solid 10 seconds. I need you to hold that image because it's important and it's true, and it complicates everything. My mother loved my daughter. She loved her out loud. She has never once in 6 years done anything to that child but adore her. She also never noticed the count, not once. And that has cost me more sleep than Renata ever will. The kids were at the far end, 7 of them plus Simone. At the end of the long table rather than a separate one, Renata had opened up the table this year so nobody's separate, which is a sentence I heard her say, out loud, that night, to me, with her hand on my arm. Callaway's does a thing for children where they put down a paper placemat and a little metal cup of crayons. 6 colors, mostly broken. Simone started drawing about 4 minutes after we sat down, and she drew for most of an hour, on and off, between talking to Marit and stealing a roll. There was a toast. Renata does the toast now. She's good at it. She talked about my father, and she got a laugh with the story about the canoe, and she said 31 years at this table, and everyone lifted a glass, and it was, I want to be fair, a lovely toast. Then the cart came out. I've already told you what happened. I don't want to walk you down that table again. But there's a detail I left out of the opening, and I left it out on purpose. When the server set the noodles down in front of Simone, my niece Prue, 11 years old, Renata's own daughter, looked at Simone's bowl, then at her own plate, and then all the way up the table at her mother. And she said, not quietly, in the way 11-year-olds fail to be quiet, "Mom, they forgot Simone's." The room did not go silent. I want to be accurate. 22 people, half of them talking, a room with hard surfaces. Maybe 9 people heard it. Renata smiled and said, "She's got hers, sweetheart." And Prue said, "That's pasta." And Renata said, still smiling, still warm, "It's a head count thing, Prue. Eat." Third time. And that's the one that went into me sideways, because I understood something in that second that I hadn't before. It wasn't an oversight. You don't have a stock phrase ready for an oversight. You have a stock phrase for a policy. Simone, who had heard all of it, put her hand over the top of her bowl like she was protecting it and said, "I really like this, actually. I don't like when the food looks at you." 9 people laughed. It broke the moment. My daughter, 8 years old, read that room and diffused it for the adults. Because that's what she learned to do in the first 5 years of her life, before me. Somebody down the table said, "She's so easy." Yes, she is very easy. That was the problem the whole time. Easy children get counted last. I ate my chicken. I asked Bennett about his knee. I complimented the flowers, which were Renata's, and which were beautiful. At the end, when people were doing coats, Simone said, "Mom, look," and slid the placemat across to me. She'd drawn all 8 of them. Cal, Prue, Odile, Wilder, Tobias, Marit, Kit, and Simone. in a row, holding hands, biggest to smallest, with the names underneath in her handwriting, phonetic on the hard ones, Toebius. And at the top, in green capital letters, one word, US. And down at the end of the row, off to the side, she'd drawn the lake with a boat on it, and the boat had 8 little dots in it, which I did not ask about, and which I think about approximately every day. I folded that placemat into quarters and I put it in my coat pocket. I'd like to tell you I had a plan by then. I didn't. I had a folded piece of paper in a coat pocket and a headache behind my right eye, and a kid in the back seat asking if we could get the good pasta again sometime. We got home at 9:20. Simone was asleep by 9:50. I sat on the kitchen floor with my back against the dishwasher, which is where I do my worst thinking, and I opened my phone to text Joelle something I never sent. And I saw it in the archived list. Muted. 2 years muted. Marchetti run of show. Here's the piece nobody in my family ever thought about, including me, until that moment. I created that group in 2016 for my mother's 70th. It was my crew thread me, my siblings, my mother, 2 cousins, for load-in times and who's picking up the cake. In 2017, Renata took over the events. In 2019, she renamed the group and changed the photo and started using it as her command center for everything. The dinners, the lake week, the portraits, the memory book. She never made a new group. She inherited mine. And you don't get removed from a group you made unless somebody removes you, and nobody removes the quiet one. Because nobody remembers. The quiet one is in the room. I had muted it in 2022 after the lake list because it hurt to watch people plan things my kid wasn't in. I want to be very clear about something because it matters to me. I did not spy on my family. I forgot about a group chat for 2 years and then I opened it on the night my daughter got noodles. That's all that happened. If that's still too far for you, I understand. And you can tell me so in the comments and I'll read it. I scrolled up. Most of it was nothing. Parking. Someone's flight. A picture of a swatch. Then July 14th, 4:52 p.m. Renata. Callaway deposit going in tomorrow. Locking the kids' entree count. Doing the lobster for the grandkids again this year. It photographs so well, and it's the shot everyone shares. Count is 7. Simone will do the kids' pasta. $14. She's not in the legacy set anyway, and I don't want the row broken up in the wides. It's a head count thing, not a feelings thing. Please, nobody make it one. Then Anders, 5:06 p.m. A thumbs up. My brother, 6 minutes, a thumbs up. Then Thea, 5:40 p.m. Is that okay? Then Renata, 5:41 p.m. Vivian's call. She wants the 7 together for the legacy shots. Let's not put her in the middle of it. Then nothing. Thread moves on. Somebody asks about parking. I sat on that floor and read those messages maybe 15 times, and I want to describe to you exactly what happened in my chest because it was not what I expected. It wasn't rage. Rage would have been a relief. It was the feeling of a light finally coming up on a set you've been standing on in the dark for 6 years, and seeing that the room is not the shape you thought it was. 3 months. It was budgeted 3 months out. There was a line item. My daughter had a price $14 and a reason, and the reason was that she broke the row. She's not in the legacy set. That's what all of it had been. Not cruelty, not even dislike. Something worse and much more modern than either. My daughter was a composition problem. And the second thing, the thing that took another hour to land. Vivian's call. My mother was in that group chat. Her name was right there in the member list. And my mother has never in her life opened that application. My mother communicates by landline and by showing up at your house with a foil pan. Every response she has ever given to that group has come as a phone call to someone else, who then reports it. Which means for years, Renata had been able to say Vivian wanted it into a room where Vivian could not hear her, and nobody ever checked. Because who fact-checks a woman being helpful? I did not do anything that night. I want that on the record too. I made tea and didn't drink it and went to bed at 2:40. I know some of you are yelling at your screen right now. Post it. Screenshot the whole thread. Put it in the family chat. Put it on her business page. Tag her clients. Burn it down. Believe me, I heard that voice too. At 3 in the morning, in my own bed, with my kid asleep down the hall. We could have. I want you to understand that I know we could have. But here's the arithmetic I did at 3 a.m., and it's the only smart thing I did in this entire story. If I fire that first, I become the event. Not the lobsters, not the count. Me. The dramatic sister who went nuclear over a dinner. Simone becomes the girl a fight happened about, forever, at every holiday for the rest of her life. And I hand Renata the one gift she can't buy, a version of this, where she's the victim of me. So I did the thing Hollis taught me in a dusty fly rail 20 years ago. Stand by. Not go. Stand by. If this is hitting close to home, if you've ever been the 8th person in a family of 7, comment the word 8 and subscribe. Because in 3 days, that woman handed me the only thing I was missing, and she did it herself, in public, to 9,000 strangers. 3 days. Saturday was the dinner. Sunday I took Simone to the aquarium, and she held my hand the whole way through the tunnel. Monday, I had a tech rehearsal that ran until 11, and I was up on a ladder with Hollis refocusing a sidelight when my back gave out a little, and he told me I was getting old, and I said he'd been old since the 90s. Tuesday morning at 9:14, my phone buzzed twice on the counter while I was rinsing a cereal bowl. 2 messages from Joelle. The first was a link. The second said, Delia, don't look at this alone. So of course I looked at it standing at the sink with wet hands. It was the Voss and Ivy account. A new post, put up at 8 o'clock that morning. 10 photos in a carousel, launching a new offering for the holidays. She'd named it Legacy Tables, booking now for December. The photos were from Saturday. The room in that sideways October light. The windows. The flowers. My mother's hands around a glass. The cart with the cloth. A close-up of a lobster on white linen with a lemon half and a little brass number card. And I'll say it again, because I don't want to be unfair to reality. It was a stunning photograph. The caption started, 31 years at one table, 3 generations, 7 grandchildren, 1 row, 1 light. This is what we mean by a legacy table. Slide 4 was the kids' end of the table. The 7 of them, biggest to smallest, all 7 plates in a line, all 7 faces turned toward the camera, laughing at something. It was a wide shot, and it had been cropped. Because at the very left edge of that frame, at the boundary where the image stopped, there was a hand, a small hand, cut off at the wrist by the edge of the photograph, resting on the corner of a paper placemat with green crayon on it. My daughter's hand. They didn't crop her out of a family album. Families do that badly, all the time, by accident. This was a business making a marketing asset. And to make the composition work, I don't want the row broken up. In the wides, a professional had gone into that image and pulled the edge in until an 8-year-old was on the other side of it, and left the hand. I stood at that sink for a long time. The water was still running. And then I scrolled to the comments, and that's where it stopped being about a dinner. 40-some comments, vendors, past clients, a woman who does calligraphy for her. And 9 minutes before I got there, somebody named Dana, who I have never met, who I will be quietly grateful to for the rest of my life, had written, obsessed with this room. Also, who's the sweet little one at the edge? And Renata had replied, at 8:47 that morning, publicly, under her business name. Thank you. That's a family friend's little girl. She joined us for the evening. A family friend's little girl. My daughter has my last name. It's on a court order with a raised seal. My mother has hugged her for 10 seconds at a time in a boathouse. My brother is her uncle. She has been in that family for 6 years. A family friend's little girl. I screenshotted it. Then I went back up the thread and screenshotted July 14th. 2 images, in my camera roll, side by side. That's what I told you about in the beginning. That's the whole arsenal. 2 pictures on a phone. Here's what I did with them. I did not post them. I did not send them to the family group. I did not email her clients. And about 4 people have since asked me why not, and one of them was disappointed in me. I drove to my mother's house. I got there at 2:40 on a Tuesday afternoon. She was on the back porch with the good scissors, cutting the dead heads off the geraniums into a coffee can, wearing my father's old flannel, which she does from October onward every year. I had printed the 2 screenshots at the theater office on the copier that jams. 2 pages, in a plain envelope. Because I couldn't hand her a phone, my mother holds a phone the way you'd hold a wet frog. I sat down on the step below her chair, which is where I've sat since I was 9. I said, "Mom, I need you to read 2 things. I'm not going to talk while you read them, and I'm not going to ask you for anything after." She said, "Well, that's ominous." And she put on the glasses that live on the chain. She read the first page, the July 14th one. She read it twice. I watched her eyes go back to the top. She said, "What's a legacy set?" I said, "It's the photographs." She read the second page, the family friend's little girl, and my mother, 79 years old, put the pages down on her knee and looked out at a yard she's looked at for 51 years. And she said one thing. She said, "When did I say 7?" I said, "I don't know, Mom." She said, "I never said 7. I don't count them." And then she said, "Leave those with me." That's it. That was my entire campaign. 1 drive, 1 envelope, 1 sentence. And then I got back in my car and I picked Simone up from aftercare and we got tacos. I didn't tell my mother what to do. I didn't ask her to do anything. That's not restraint for its own sake, and it's not me being a saint. It's the only version where whatever happened next wasn't mine. I want that on the record, because of what happened next. Wednesday, Thea called Renata. I found this out later. Thea had seen the post, had already been uneasy since July, and she asked her point blank about the family friend comment. Renata told her it was a privacy thing, that she didn't post minors' relationships publicly for safeguarding reasons, which would be an excellent answer if the other 7 minors weren't named in slide captions. Thursday, Prue asked her mother at dinner why Simone wasn't in the picture. 11 years old. I love that kid. By Friday, there was enough noise in the family that Renata did what she has always done when something gets loose. She scheduled it. Sunday, 4 p.m., my mother's house. A text to the group, my group. Still, technically, that said. Family sit down Sunday, 4 p.m. at Vivienne's. Clearing the air so we can all move forward. Kids stay home, please. Delia. Especially want you there. I read that text about 9 times. Delia, especially want you there. I want to explain what that meeting was because if you've never been in a family like mine, you might think it was an apology in the making. It wasn't. It was a set. It was blocked and lit before anyone walked in. I know what a staged room looks like. I've built 400 of them. When I got there at 3:55, the dining table had been moved. Chairs were in a loose horseshoe in the living room, and there was 1 chair pulled slightly out from the rest, angled in, facing the others. You don't need to be a stage manager to know whose chair that was. But it helps. 14 adults. Anders on the couch with his elbows on his knees, looking at the carpet, in what I can only describe as the posture of a man attending his own deposition. Joelle next to me, furious, in the way Joelle gets furious, which is very quiet and slightly green. Thea and her husband, 2 aunts, Bennett, cousins. My mother in her chair by the window, with her hands in her lap and an envelope on the side table beside her, under the lamp, where anyone could see it if they were the kind of person who looks at things. Renata was standing. She had a folder. She started warm. She always starts warm. She said she'd been sick about all of this. She said that a lot of hurt had come up this week and she took responsibility for her part in how a photo landed. That's the sentence. How a photo landed. Then she made the turn. It took about 90 seconds. She said that what actually worried her wasn't the dinner. What worried her was that for a long time now, there had been a scorekeeping energy in the family, that certain hurts were being collected, that she'd heard I had been going through old messages, that she loved me, that she knew this year had been hard, but that a family can't function if one person is building a case. Nobody had told her about the printouts. She was guessing. She'd worked out, correctly, that something had gotten to my mother. And then she opened the folder and took out a stack of one-page documents and started handing them around the horseshoe. And I swear to you on my father's grave, it had a header in a serif font. A Marchetti family agreement protecting the peace. 4 bullet points. Bring concerns directly and privately. No documenting family members. No involving outside parties or platforms. Assume good intent. She held one out to me last, and she crouched down a little, the way you do with a child or a dog, and she said, in the warmest voice in that entire room, "Delia, I'd love it if you'd just say out loud that we're all done keeping score. That's all. Then we can eat." 12 people were watching me. One chair, pulled out, angled in. I looked at the paper. Then I set it face down on my knee. And I said the only sentence I said in that entire meeting. I said, "No thank you." And that was going to be it. I'd decided in the car. Say no, don't explain. Drive home. Be done with these people for a year or two. Protect the kid. Let it cost what it costs. That's when my mother said, "Renata." She hadn't said a word for 11 minutes. When my mother says your name, the room stops. It has done that my entire life. She said, "When did I tell you 7? Renata straightened up. She said, "I'm sorry." "The lobsters, the pictures, the list for the lake. You told your sister-in-law in July that it was my call. When did I tell you 7? And I watched a very smart woman make the only mistake she made in 9 years, which is that she answered. She said, "Vivienne, at Easter we talked about keeping the legacy shots consistent. You said you liked the row of them." My mother said, "I said I liked the picture." And then she picked up the envelope from under the lamp. And she didn't hand it to anyone. And she didn't wave it. She just held it in her lap with both hands like a hymnal. She said, "It's got my name in it. In your telephone. Saying a thing I never said. About my own grandchild." The room did the thing rooms do. 22 people at a boathouse hadn't gone quiet. 14 people in a living room did. Renata said, "That's a private conversation that Delia had no business." My mother said, "It's got my name in it." Same words, slower. Then she said the part I'll hear for the rest of my life. She said it to the room, not to Renata, and she said it like she was reading a grocery list. "There's 8 of them. I've got 8 grandchildren. Whoever's been telling people I've got 7 has been telling them wrong, and they'll stop today." Then she said, "The October dinner's mine again. Callaway's is in my name from now on, and I'll do the Lake Week myself with Joelle. Renata, you're welcome in this house any Sunday of your life, and you'll not plan another thing in this family." Anders said, "Mom." And my mother said, "Anders, you put a thumb up on it." That's all. 4 words to her son. He didn't say anything else for the rest of the day. He hasn't said very much to me since either, and I've stopped waiting. Renata gathered her papers. She was composed. She's always composed. It's the thing we have in common. At the door, she turned and looked directly at me, and she said very evenly, "You could have come to me." And I said, "In July?" She left. I didn't win that room. I want to be very clear, because this is the part people get wrong about these stories. I didn't win anything in there. I said 4 words in 90 minutes. My mother did it. And my mother did it because a 79-year-old woman found out her name had been used as a weapon against a child she loved, And she has never in her life let a thing like that stand. All I did was hand her 2 pieces of paper and then get out of the way. I've told you my mother didn't punish anybody. She didn't. There was no exile, no announcement, no phone tree. That's not how it works in families like mine, and honestly, that's not how it works in most of them. What happened was slower and much stranger to watch. People just stopped standing where they'd been standing. Monday, October 21st. The Legacy Tables post came down. No statement. The offering stayed on the website but got renamed to Seasonal Gatherings, and Slide 4 never appeared anywhere again. Late October, Thea called me on a Thursday night and cried for 11 minutes. She said, I asked in July, and I let one line shut me up. I told her the truth, which is that a woman who asks once in a group chat is doing more than I did for 6 years. Then she told me she'd asked Renata to stop using photos of Odile and Kit for the business, going forward, and Renata had said, of course, warmly, and had not spoken to her since. November 3rd. Joelle did the same thing about the twins. Same warm answer. That's 2 of the 7 gone off the account inside of 3 weeks. Not because anyone organized it, because 2 mothers looked at a cropped hand and thought that could have been mine. November 12th. I got the text I'd been waiting for without knowing I was waiting for it. Renata privately, at 10:40 at night. Long. Well written, she is a genuinely gifted writer of difficult messages, and I mean that. She said she had been reflecting. She said she could see how the evening had created an impact she never intended. She said she wanted to make it right, and here was her proposal. A dinner at Calloway's, the Beacon Room, just before Christmas. On her. Everyone. Lobster for all 8, including Simone. The same as everyone. Exactly as it should have been. She'd bring Ruth to shoot it. She'd frame one for my mother and one for me. She wrote, I want Simone to have the night she should have had. I sat with that for 2 days, and I want to walk you through why I said no, because I know some of you would have taken it, and I don't think you'd be wrong. Here's the thing. If Simone had gone to that dinner and gotten her $95 lobster with a photographer standing there, my daughter would not have received a lobster. She would have received a correction. She'd have been the fixed problem at a dinner about how the family fixed a problem, with a picture of it on the wall, forever. And Renata would have gotten the only thing she was actually asking for, which is a photograph in which the family is whole, and she is the one who made it whole. The offer wasn't repair, it was a reshoot. So on November 14th I wrote back 4 lines. I've got them, because I still have the thread. Renata, thank you for the message. I'm not going to do the dinner. Simone is fine, and I'd like to leave her out of the part where we fix this. I'm not angry, and I'm not asking you for anything. She never answered, and that silence told me more than the message had, because a person who is sorry can survive being told no. A person who needs the picture can't. November 28th. Thanksgiving. My mother's, 21 people, no seating chart, no theme, 3 foil pans and a store cake. Anders and Renata came. It was awkward for about 40 minutes, and then it was fine, because 8 children in a house will grind anything smooth. I did not talk to Renata. She did not talk to me. We passed each other in a kitchen doorway, and she said, "Excuse me." And I said sorry, and we both meant neither of those things, and we both meant them completely. December 3rd. I opened Marchetti Run of Show for the last time, and I left it. 9 years. My group, my name on it from 2016, and I finally walked out of a room I'd been standing in with the lights off. It gave me no satisfaction at all. It just felt like putting down something heavy in the driveway. December 24th. This is the one. Christmas Eve at my mother's. Simone and I got there early because we always get there early. That's still me. I'm still crew. I'll be carrying folding chairs when I'm 80. And on the mantle there were 8 stockings. Hand knit. Cream with a red heel. Same as the other 7. Same as 1998. Second from the end, in my mother's handwriting on the little wooden tag. Simone. Simone saw it before I did. She was standing on the hearth with her coat still on, and she turned around and said, "Mom, there's mine." Not is that mine. There's mine. I went out to the car and sat in it for a while. I've done a lot of my crying in that driveway. It's a good driveway for it. My mother found me at some point. Because she always does. And she stood by the door with a dish towel over her shoulder, and she said, "I started it in October." Which meant she'd started it before the meeting. Which meant she'd started it the night I left the envelope. Then she said, "I should have counted. I was busy being adored." That's the most honest sentence anybody in my family has said in 30 years, and she said it to a car window. The following July. The list for the Lake Week went out from my mother's landline, which means she called 8 people individually and read it to them, which took her most of a Tuesday. 8 names. Simone slept on the couch that everybody fights over and came home with a sunburn on one shoulder and a fishing lure she is not allowed to keep in her room. The second Saturday. In October this year. Callaway's Point, the Beacon Room. Reservation in Vivienne Marchetti's name. 19 of us. Renata and Anders came. Their kids came. No photographer. No brass number cards. My mother ordered lobster for the whole table, adults included, and when the cart came out she said, "Everybody or nobody, that's the last time we do it." And I understood that she was talking to exactly one person and that the person understood her. Simone ate about a third of hers and then asked, very quietly, whether she could get the noodles instead. And she got the noodles. Voss and Ivy is still in business. I want to say that plainly, because I'm not interested in lying to you to make the ending taste better. She's fine. She did the cannery market. She books weddings. She's good at what she does, and she will probably be doing it in 20 years. What she lost was smaller than a business and much harder to replace. She lost the right to speak in my mother's voice. That was the entire foundation of 9 years of power, and it turned out to be one sentence deep. Vivienne's call. The day somebody finally asked Vivienne, the whole thing came down, and it came down so fast that most of my family still doesn't really know what happened. Only that things are different now, and nobody plans anything but my mother. The table didn't get flipped over. It just quietly emptied of everything that wasn't true, and what was left fit better. Now here's the piece I actually came here to tell you. Simone doesn't know. She's 9 now. She was never told about the group chat, or the meeting, or the crop, or the words family friends little girl. She never will be. Not from me. Not while she's a child. If she asks at 19, I'll tell her all of it, and I'll answer whatever she wants to ask, and I'll deserve whatever she thinks of me. Because here's what she remembers about the second Saturday, in October 2024. I asked her about it in the car, months later, sideways, the way you have to ask kids things. She said, "That was the good pasta night." That's it, that's her whole memory of the worst night of my adult life. The butter was good, and the roll was warm, and Aunt Renata's flowers had the little red berries in them, and Grandma hugged her for a long time in the doorway. And I let that stand. I did not correct her. I will not correct her. Because that is the entire point of the last 2 years, and I didn't understand it until I heard her say it. Every single thing I did, the waiting, the not posting, the 4 words in that living room, the envelope, instead of the bonfire, all of it was so that my daughter would never have to know the shape of the room she was standing in. Hollis told me once that the ghost light isn't for you. You already know where the edge of the stage is. You leave it burning for whoever walks in next. That's the whole job. That's motherhood, honestly. You know where the edge is. You stand between it and them, and you keep your voice level. And one day, they grow up thinking the theater was always lit. The placemat is framed. Cheap black frame from the craft store, on the wall in our kitchen by the light switch, where you can't get out the door without passing it. 8 kids in a row, biggest to smallest, holding hands. Toebius, in green crayon. The word US at the top in capital letters. And down in the corner, a boat on the lake with 8 dots in it, which she now says was everyone going somewhere, and which she does not remember drawing. In 1996, an 11-year-old girl sat at a folding table in a hallway under a humming light and drew 60 people holding hands and put herself in the middle where she wasn't sitting, and her father crouched down and said, "Good, keep it that way," and then went back inside and left her there. 28 years later, a child sat at a long table by a window in the good light and drew 8 children holding hands and put herself in the row where they hadn't put her. I don't think she inherited it. She'd never met him. But I think there's something that happens to kids who get seated at the edge of a family, and the lucky ones draw themselves back in with a broken crayon, and the ones who make it have somebody in the room who does more than say keep it that way. I didn't leave her in the hallway. That's the only thing I did in this whole story that I'm proud of. So here's the one sentence I've got, if you take nothing else. Nobody in a family ever has to tell you what you are to them. Just watch what they count. They'll count the stockings, and the place cards, and the beds, and the plates. They'll count you or they won't. And if you find out you're not in the number, you don't have to scream about it, and you don't have to burn anything down. You just have to stop volunteering to be furniture. Find the one person in that family who still tells the truth, hand them the proof, and get out of the way. The room will reset itself. It always does. Rooms are lazy that way. They hold whatever shape you keep standing in. That's my story. If you've ever been the 8th in a family of 7, tell me down in the comments. Tell me what they counted, and tell me if anybody ever fixed it. I read every one of them, and I answer more than you'd think. If this one hit you somewhere, share it with the person who'll understand it without you having to explain, and subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Take care of the quiet kid at the end of your table, and I'll see you in the next.